So in past consumer trends presentations, we talked about this idea of omni-channel consumers. People want to be able to seamlessly transition shopping habits from in-app to browser or even in-store. And now this trend has shifted in a new way. We've gone from going shopping to always shopping. And when we look at where people start their shopping search, comes as no surprise that Amazon is at the highest at 63%. But social networks are now popping up with 32% starting their search on YouTube, 27% on Facebook, 21% TikTok, and 20% on Instagram. I fell for this myself recently. I was telling some coworkers that I saw an ad for the Crunch Cup that lets you take your cereal on the road, and I had to buy it immediately. Obviously, it's not something I'd go out looking for. I didn't even know it existed. I wasn't planning on shopping or purchasing anything. But now that we're being served ads, sometimes without even realizing it, we're always in a shopping state of mind, even when we don't intend to be. And I'm not alone when it comes to social commerce. When we look at the growth that has taken place, this is broken out by platform, but you can see the increases across all platforms. In 2022, US retail social commerce hit over $53 billion. And while the percentage in growth year over year through 2025 looks like it's slowing down, sales are actually expected to reach over $107 billion. And the number of new social commerce buyers is increasing, mostly due to TikTok, and the average spend per user is also increasing. So by 2025, over 114 million users will spend an average of nearly $1,000 a year on social purchases. So speaking of TikTok, this chart gets into TikTok shopping behaviors worldwide. And as you can see, 71.2% of people are like me and will shop when they stumble across something like a Crunch Cup in their feed. But over 58% of people actually use TikTok for shopping inspiration, and 48% use it to gather information when shopping. Over 1/3 of respondents said they actively look for products in their feed. So it's really changed from being a social platform where we occasionally make purchases when stumbling across something to a place that people actually seek out inspiration and use as a shopping tool. And TikTok has had such an impact that Amazon recently announced it's rolling out a new in-app feature called Inspire, which will be more photo and video-based content created by brands, influencers, and other customers. And it's intended to be a scrolling format that encourages engagement through likes and links directly to Amazon products that have been featured. This was expected to start rolling out to select US users early last month and then become available to all US users in the next coming months. And this was Amazon's solution to try to compete with TikTok and Instagram. According to eMarketer, only 38% of US social users have made purchases on a social platform in the 12 months that preceded their June 2022 survey. And when looking by generation, it's a 50-50 split for both Gen Z and millennials between buyers and non-buyers. So really, what does this mean? While most social users aren't regularly making purchases, those who are continue to spend more each year. Social media buyers are also spending more time on social platforms, and obviously age plays an important role in social shopping habits. That includes which platforms buyers will use to make purchases on and what essentially prompts them to complete a transaction. But there are social media buyers across all generations. A huge piece of social commerce includes influencers, and the impact that they have on consumers continues to increase. In fact, 53% of Americans say they are more likely to purchase a product from an influencer over a celebrity. There's just more of this organic feel. Sometimes you feel like you know these people, where celebrities are kind of untouchable. Over 60% of consumers actively look to influencers to help them discover new brands. In general, the role of influencers is to create meaningful and trusting relationships with their audience, which leads consumers to look to them for opinions on products. Obviously, again, we see variances across age groups, with 75% of 18 to 25-year-olds saying social media influencer input related to products or services is instrumental on their final purchase decision, versus just 40% of those aged 42 to 57. And while social media commerce is on the rise, this trend is not going to slow down anytime soon. So it's definitely an area that we're keeping an eye on and making sure we're staying ahead of any trends. So I will pass things back to Bernie, who will take us through our key takeaways, holiday shopping, and gaming.
Thanks, Gwen. Kind of to sum up the combination there of social commerce as well as influencers. I saw this particular phrase suggested again by WARC, where what really has happened is that we've started to develop an era of bubble up culture rather than kind of top down. We are much more a society, a community of tribes that have fractured, becoming more fragmented, and there are kind of decision leaders that are coming from anywhere. They are, a source for both culture, for commerce, for other things, and taking part in it from a brand's kind of standpoint is critical, but it's also going to be very difficult because it requires very authentic ways of interacting and different from what we're used to in the advertising and marketing, where we were disseminating information towards our customers. And this again is much more of a conversation, and that authenticity requires making the right connections, with the right influencers who jive with your brand, with your brand positioning, because one thing is clear in this new bubble up culture is consumers can see through companies that are only kind of paying things to get things done. They can see through influencers who are doing that as well and have overstepped that trust bound. So it's changing the consumer journey, and these creators or influencers are a critical lifeblood, especially among younger generations, but across segments, as Gwen alluded to. So influencers are very big, and they continue to be. And one of the areas we saw that was even just in the recently completed holiday period here. On the next slide, before we move on to our next trend, we wanted to share just a little bit of ways influencers have impacted the just completed holiday shopping period. On the data here, you can see very much a cross-section of all the different kinds of ways or types of social content that people are looking and engaging with. In the center, you can see a few things where live video of product use, short video clips on social media are seeing some of the biggest increases in those gold bars that you're seeing on these year-to-year trend information. Very much effect of video focus, lots of different ways that influencers are doing that. And they had some positive effects on holiday sales, despite the fact that there were plans on cutting things back. So just to get a real quick kind of overview, because it's a kind of like we talked about a lot of cuts or planned cuts, what really happened. There was a subdued sales forecast for this holiday period. That, for the most part, tended to be true. There were data here, as I see on this slide from Deloitte, and they've trended things over years. A cut back on non-gift purchases is where the areas where people were really planning on cutting back, and probably the biggest part we saw in this is within the number of gifts and things that people were buying, not only in the types. So they're spending about the same year to year on gifts and on experiences, even a little bit more, but less on those non-gift items. And those things range from the holiday related decorations, some home furnishing, and other kinds of things. So that's where people were planning to cut back. And what we saw in actual data is that's where they did. Early information that we had gathered on actual results showed, traffic was up a little bit, especially for in-stores, which was positive to some extent. E-commerce was still very strong, increasing 2.3% according to Adobe on a year-over-year basis, and that the purchase total spent was around $325, just over that initial early Black Friday and Cyber Monday kind of area. The one big thing, though, that continued, and it was clear early on and throughout the holiday buying period, consumers were very much hunting for bargains. And in the end, they ended up spending more on fewer items and buying less gifts for less people. The most recent data that just came out within the last week or so showed that the number of people that people bought gifts for was reduced quite a bit. Let me see if I have that figure handy here. from them, they bought gifts for about 4 people, down from roughly 6 in the prior year. So as prices of goods went up, while they spent about the same, they got fewer items and they bought gifts for fewer people. And kind of what we see that being an indicator of is what we can expect in 2023 as we move on. Now, the one last trend that we wanted to make a reference to and call out was gaming and games, and not only everywhere, but it's really among everyone. This was a trend that was called out in a piece that I had read from one of the holding company trend forecasts, but I've seen it referenced from a number of different consultancies as well. And as you can see in the data here, the mobile gaming gamers by device here continues to rise and is forecast to do so basically into the foreseeable future. What you typically think of as the typical gamer, the console gamers, kind of relatively flat by that red line in the center of that particular graph. But ad revenues, because of the mobile gamers, definitely forecast on the rise. A 10% increase forecast for this year, 2023, and roughly 9% or more for the next 3 years or so. And so it's not surprising that with gamers and rising, that dollars would go there as well. And another reason the dollars are following that is that gaming has gone kind of mainstream. With data on the next slide, we can see the penetration by age segment, even now at over half for those age 65 and older, love their mobile games, playing them often, finding their favorites. And that means opportunities in a lot of different ways. And not just beyond the ads that were referenced within the spend on the prior slide as well. Gaming is also a way of getting engagement with audiences and in a value exchange kind of way, gathering the first party data that advertisers so much want to have. So, offering an engaging situation, a fun situation, or opportunity for consumers to interact and for you to get information, maybe win something in the process. It's also a great way of disseminating content and or information that brands want to get out there to particular audiences, doing it in an entertaining and informative way that isn't just speaking at them.